My grandma asked me to type her will. I did. And the whole family went crazy when I turned out to be the heir. I'll never forget the look on Uncle David's face when the lawyer read my name out loud. He blinked. Once. Then again. My Aunt Lisa's wine glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the hardwood floor. And Madison. She let out this weird half-laugh. Like she thought it was a joke. But it wasn't. It was real. Emily Carter, was the sole heir to my grandmother's estate, her house, her land, her investments, even the antique jewelry she never let anyone touch. Everything. And it all started with a simple question. Sweetheart, would you help me type something up this weekend? Just a little housekeeping, nothing important. I had no idea she was talking about her will. It was a quiet Saturday morning in Oregon. The kind where the fog still clung to the trees outside, and the only sound in Grandma Helen's house was the faint hum of the kettle. I was home for the weekend like I usually was, not because I had to be, because I wanted to be. Grandma had raised me from age 9, after Mom passed. Everyone in the family had their excuses, careers, families. Too busy. But for me, she was never an obligation. She was home. She was sitting at the kitchen table in her usual knit cardigan, flipping through an old leather folder. Amin, she called gently. Do you still have that laptop of yours? Of course. I smiled. Bringing it over. You writing another recipe book? She chuckled. Not quite. I just want to get something down officially. Thought I'd dictate and you could type. Just to make things tidy before the holidays. I didn't think twice. That's the thing about trust. You don't question it until it's gone. If I'd known what that document would trigger, maybe I would have asked more questions. Maybe I would have wondered why she was so specific, why she wanted it printed and sealed that same night. But back then, I just thought it was cute that she still wanted to handle things the old-fashioned way. Grandma always believed in preparation, and I believed in her. What I didn't know, what none of us knew, was that she'd already filed it, had it notarized, sent a sealed copy to her lawyer, the one I helped her type. That was just her backup. She knew what was coming. The day of the will reading. Everyone was there. Uncle David, with his perfect golf tan. Aunt Lisa, dressed like she was attending a charity gala. Madison, glued to her phone. No one even looked at me when I walked in. I was the niece who never moved out. The assistant, as Aunt Lisa liked to call me. So when the lawyer opened the envelope and cleared his throat and said my name, you could feel the air leave the room. That was the moment everything changed. They thought I was the help. But Grandma, she saw me as family, as the only one who never asked for anything, and the only one who'd earned everything. And that's when the screaming started. You know how some kids grow up knowing they're part of a team? Birthdays filled with cameras, laughter, a chorus of "We're proud of you." That wasn't me. I was the quiet one in the corner of the family cookout, trying not to drop the plastic plate. I wasn't ignored. Not exactly. More like overlooked. As if being present was the same as being included. After my mom died in a car accident when I was 9, everything went silent. My dad disappeared within a year. Emotional collapse. I don't blame him, but I've never heard from him again. No one wanted to take me in, not Uncle David. Not Aunt Lisa. They said things like, it's just not the right time. We're barely managing our own kids. Maybe Helen should take her. She's already retired. And so she did. Grandma opened the door and never shut it. We lived in a small farmhouse near Silverton, Oregon. It wasn't fancy, but it was solid. We had home-cooked dinners, a vegetable garden, and a fireplace that groaned in winter. She used to say, you don't need much to feel rich. Just warmth, trust, and a reason to get up each morning. Grandma made me feel safe in a way I didn't know I needed. When I cried myself to sleep the first week, she stayed up all night with me, reading from her favorite books. Steinbeck, Angelo, Frost. She never asked for anything in return. The rest of the family, they visited twice a year. Thanksgiving and Christmas. Every time, they'd breeze in with shiny gifts, fake hugs, and barely a glance in my direction. They acted like Grandma was their matriarch, as if her roof was a hotel, her pantry theirs to raid. Aunt Lisa always commented on the outdated decor. Uncle David made suggestions about modernizing the property for resale value. Meanwhile, I cleaned the guest room linens. I stocked the fridge. I helped Grandma refill her meds and check her blood sugar. No one noticed. And when they left, they always forgot something: a phone charger, sunglasses, even once a purse. But they never forgot to ask Grandma, "Did you update the trust paperwork yet? Have you looked into estate planning?" It's never too early to prepare. She always nodded politely, then rolled her eyes the moment the door closed. Once, when I was 16, I overheard Madison, my cousin, whispering to her mom, "Why does Grandma keep her around? She's like staff." Lisa had laughed and said, "Because every queen needs a servant." I never told Grandma I heard that, but I think, somehow, she knew. Still, I never thought much of inheritance, or what might happen someday. It didn't matter. I had a roof over my head, a routine, and a woman who, in her own firm, quiet way, loved me harder than anyone else ever had. I didn't need to be noticed. Not really. But when the time came, she made sure everyone did. By the time I turned 25, I wasn't just the girl who stayed. I was the one who scheduled Grandma's checkups, called her doctors, refilled prescriptions, drove her to every appointment and back even when I had to skip work. I helped her organize tax documents, scanned bills, filed medical reimbursements, and dealt with a mountain of mail from companies trying to sell her things she didn't need. "Emily, I don't know how I ever managed before you," she used to say. "Truth is, I trust you more than anyone." I thought she meant that in the way grandmothers do kind words to a dutiful granddaughter. But I started to notice something different. She stopped calling Uncle David when the boiler acted up. She called me. She asked me, not Aunt Lisa, to help close her credit cards when one got hacked. She even began adding me to emergency contacts for her accounts. One evening, as we were sipping tea on the porch, she looked out toward the trees, golden light spilling across the backyard, and said softly, "You know, the more money you have, the more people think they deserve a piece of it." I raised an eyebrow. Something happened. She smiled but didn't answer. Just took another sip. "If anything ever happens to me," she said after a moment, "I want you to know, things may get messy." I half laughed. "Grandma, please don't talk like that." But her eyes were serious. "When someone dies, Emily, it's not just grief that shows up. It's greed and resentment and old wounds people never patched. Money just gives them a reason to rip them open again." I said nothing, but the words stuck with me. The next month, she asked me to help close a long-forgotten savings account. The bank manager was surprised to see her in person. He asked if she wanted to list anyone else as a beneficiary. She looked at me, then back at him. "Just me for now," she said. "But I'm working on a more permanent plan." I didn't ask questions. Grandma was the kind of woman who always had a plan and usually kept it to herself until the moment it mattered. Meanwhile, the family dynamics never changed. David still made jokes about selling the old place someday. Lisa still critiqued the curtains and complained about the musty farmhouse air. Madison, of course, spent most of her visits taking selfies with Grandma for Instagram captions like 3 generations strong before disappearing to check her texts. They noticed me even less now. I wasn't competition. I wasn't anything. But Grandma, she saw everything. One night, after a particularly tense dinner where Lisa spent 20 minutes fishing for information about Grandma's will, she turned to me as we cleaned dishes and whispered, "They'll come for the house, the land, maybe even the garden shed if they think there's gold buried under it." I laughed. She didn't. "That's why I'm giving everything to someone who actually knows what it's worth." I paused, sponge in hand. "Who?" She smiled, drying her hands. "Don't worry. You'll know when it matters." It felt like a riddle at the time, like Grandma was setting something in motion. But I couldn't see what. Looking back now, it wasn't just a riddle. It was a warning, a message, a test of who would stay and who only showed up when there was something to gain. It was a Sunday afternoon, late spring. The lilacs outside had just bloomed, filling Grandma's kitchen with that familiar, soft perfume. She had just finished her crossword pen neatly tucked behind her ear when she looked up and said, "Emily, can we do something a little Different today? Sure, I said, sipping my coffee. I'd like your help typing a document. Nothing urgent. But I want to get it down while my mind's still sharp. I smiled. You sound like you're about to recite the Constitution. She chuckled. No, no, just something for peace of mind. I fetched my laptop from the living room, opened a blank document. She sat across from me at the table, folded her hands, and began to dictate. Her voice was calm, measured. She even paused sometimes to ask me how to spell something, though she absolutely knew how to spell it. Part of me thinks she did it to make me feel less like a secretary and more like a partner in whatever this was. She started. I, Helen Marie Carter, being of sound mind and memory, do hereby declare this to be my last will and testament. I typed it without blinking, line by line, paragraph by paragraph. Names came up. Uncle David, Aunt Lisa, even Madison. Each one was addressed respectfully. To my son, David Carter, I leave a handwritten collection of family letters, stored in my cedar chest. To my daughter, Lisa Morgan, I leave my set of silver serving trays, passed down from my mother. To my granddaughter, Madison, I leave my mother's locket and a box of vintage postcards. And then came the shift. The remainder of my estate, including but not limited to my home, land, vehicles, investment accounts, and personal possessions, I hereby leave to my granddaughter, Emily Carter. I froze. Wait, Grandma, keep typing. Sweetheart. I stared at the screen. Are you serious? She gave me the smallest smile. Just write what I say. We'll talk afterward. So I did. The rest of the document was straightforward legal phrasing, instructions for her lawyer, a note about the trust fund, and the signature line. When she finished, she reached across the table and touched my hand. Print 2 copies, she said. We'll sign one. The other's for you to keep in your files. Grandma, this is huge. You're giving me everything. No, she said gently. I'm returning it. Everything you gave me, your time, your loyalty, your heart. This is just me putting it in writing. I couldn't speak. We signed the document in front of the notary at the UPS store the next morning. No one in the family knew. She didn't want them to. They'll find out when it's time, she said. And I won't be around to hear the shouting. I thought she was joking. Even laughed. She didn't. Later that week, I tried to bring it up again to ask her if she was absolutely sure. She waved me off with her usual humor. Let them be mad. Emily. People get over disappointment, but they never get over being surprised by someone they dismissed. I never forgot that line. I didn't realize she wasn't just writing a will. She was writing a reckoning. Thanksgiving came that year, like it always did, with canned cranberry sauce, a turkey bigger than necessary, and an overstuffed house of people who all pretended to be close once a year. The Carter family reunion. Aunt Lisa arrived first, draped in Burberry and Chanel perfume, carrying a store-bought pumpkin pie she tried to pass off as homemade. Madison followed, taking selfies on the porch, adding filters before even saying hello. Uncle David came late, as usual, grumbling about traffic and politics. I'd been up since dawn, helping Grandma with the stuffing, setting the table, making sure she took her medication. When they walked through the door, their attention was on the food, not on us. It never was. Dinner started like a scripted play. Lisa boasted about her new bathroom remodel. David ranted about property taxes. Madison asked if anyone followed her on TikTok yet. No one asked Grandma how she was feeling. No one noticed her hands trembling slightly as she carved the turkey. I did. You okay? I whispered, leaning close. She nodded, barely. I'm fine. Just tired of pretending. I didn't know what she meant then. But I would. Midway through dinner, David brought it up casually, as if discussing the weather. Mom, have you updated your estate stuff lately? I know the market's been up. That land must be worth a fortune now. Grandma didn't look up from her plate. I've taken care of it. Lisa laughed, sipping her wine, hopefully evenly. You've always been fair, Mom. Grandma finally looked up, her face unreadable. Fair isn't always equal. The room quieted. Only for a second, Madison chimed in, half joking. As long as I get the pearls and the porch swing, I'm good. Everyone chuckled. Everyone but Grandma. and me. I sat there, chewing slowly, listening to them talk about my future like it was their property. They speculated out loud about how the house would be split. Who would take the lake lot? Who'd sell what? Who deserved more based on what they'd done for the family? I wanted to scream. Instead, I passed the mashed potatoes. After dessert, as everyone lounged in the living room half watching football, I found Grandma in the kitchen, loading the dishwasher slowly. "They have no idea," I said quietly. She glanced at me, a twinkle behind her fatigue. "Nope. And that's the fun of it." I raised an eyebrow. "Fun." She wiped her hands on a towel. "They spent their whole lives believing what they wanted about me, that I was weak, easy to manage, someone they could charm when it mattered. They never once asked what I wanted." I said nothing. "You know what I want now, Emily." I shook my head. "I want to watch them react, even if it's just in spirit. I want the truth to drop like thunder, and it would, sooner than any of them expected." Because 2 weeks later, Grandma was gone. It happened on a Thursday morning. I was at work, answering emails. When I got the call, the nurse from the visiting care service sounded composed, almost rehearsed. "Emily, I'm so sorry. Helen passed peacefully in her sleep last night. Her vitals dropped suddenly. It was quick. She didn't suffer." I didn't cry. I didn't feel anything at first. Just silence, a strange ringing in my ears, like the world had turned down its volume. Just a notch. I went home, to our house, her house, and stood in the hallway, still wearing my work shoes, still clutching my car keys like an anchor. The air smelled like lavender and lemon oil. She'd always kept it clean, even when her hands shook. I noticed her slippers were still beside the couch, her glasses folded neatly on her book. She'd been reading Frost again. Nothing gold can stay. The family arrived within 24 hours. First was Aunt Lisa, in black head to toe, crying before she even stepped out of the car. Then Uncle David, solemn and stone-faced, hand on my shoulder like we were suddenly close. Madison came in late, sunglasses still on indoors, whispering to someone on the phone about timing everything around finals. They brought casseroles and fake condolences. But not once, not even once, did they ask if I was okay. Lisa wandered the house almost immediately. "Where did Mom keep her jewelry again? Has anyone checked the safe? I hope she didn't give that diamond brooch to the cleaning lady." I said nothing, just kept arranging chairs for the memorial. David pulled me aside in the kitchen. "Hey, about the estate stuff. Has anyone been in touch with her attorney?" I nodded. "He's coming Monday." "Good, good," he said, pretending to sip his coffee. "I'm sure she left clear instructions. You know how she was. Always fair." I looked him in the eyes for the first time that day. Yes, she was. That night, I slept in Grandma's bed. It still smelled like her lotion, vanilla, and rose. I held her pillow and finally cried. Not because she left me with a house, but because she left me at all. The funeral was small. A few old friends from church, her book club ladies, 2 neighbors who brought flower arrangements and stories about how she used to sneak them cinnamon rolls when they mowed her lawn. Lisa wept at the podium. David said something about legacy. Madison didn't speak, just posted a carousel of black and white photos with the caption, "Goodbye to a real one, family forever." I gave the eulogy last, short, simple. She was more than a grandmother. She was my compass, my safety, my home. I don't know who I am without her, but I'll try to become who she believed I could be. After the service, Lisa cornered me near the dining table. "So, now that we're all gathered, maybe it's time we talk next steps." I raised an eyebrow. "Next steps. You know, distribution, logistics." She had a lot of assets. I assume she left a detailed will. I nodded. "She did." "Great," she said, forcing a smile. Hopefully no surprises. I didn't respond, because in less than 72 hours, surprise would become an understatement. Monday came with gray skies and cold wind, the kind of weather that felt like a warning. At exactly 10 a.m., Mr. Langford arrived. He was Grandma's attorney for nearly 2 decades. A man in his 60s with steel gray hair, wire-frame glasses, and a voice like a metronome. Precise, measured, unshaken. He brought a thick leather folder, a sealed envelope, and a laptop he placed carefully on the dining table. We all gathered around. Uncle David sat at the head of the table, arms folded like a king waiting for tribute. Aunt Lisa to his right, already flipping through her planner. Madison chewed gum quietly, legs crossed, bored. I sat off to the side, silent, hands folded, heart pounding. Mr. Langford cleared his throat. Helen Carter's will was legally executed and notarized on the 15th of last month. She reviewed its contents one final time, 10 days before her passing. This is the most recent and only active version. David nodded confidently. That's good. She always kept her affairs in order. Langford continued, undisturbed. Helen has asked that her will be read aloud in full to all present members of the family. Please remain seated. He unfolded the first page and began to read. It started formally. Helen Marie Carter, being of sound mind and memory. And then came the personal touches. The small things, the things they thought would be their proof. To Uncle David, she left the family letters. To Aunt Lisa, the antique silver trays. To Madison, the vintage locket, the one she posted selfies with every Thanksgiving. Each gift was thoughtful, sentimental, symbolic, but not valuable. There were no stocks, no land, no mention of the lake house, not the house we sat in, not the accounts she'd built over 40 years. David's brow furrowed. Lisa shifted uncomfortably. Madison actually looked up from her phone. Then came the line, the remainder of my estate, including all real property, financial assets, investments, vehicles, and possessions not otherwise mentioned, I leave in their entirety to my granddaughter, Emily Carter. The silence was immediate and brutal. David blinked. Excuse me. Langford didn't look up. Would you like me to repeat it? Lisa leaned forward. That can't be right. There must be an error. There is no error, Langford replied. I have the signed and witnessed document here, as well as the recording from the notary session. Madison laughed. Wait, Emily, are you serious? Grandma gave everything to her. Langford adjusted his glasses. Yes, everything not specifically mentioned belongs to Emily Carter. David slammed his palm on the table. This is outrageous. This isn't fair. Langford closed the folder slowly. Your mother anticipated your objections. She left a statement, in writing, to be read at this point. He reached into his folder again, pulled out a single typed page. Read it aloud. To my children and grandchildren. I know this comes as a surprise, but it shouldn't. Emily is the only person who's been here, really been here. Not just for holidays, not just for inheritance talk, but for me, every day, every doctor's visit, every stormy night. She never asked for a thing and gave me everything. You were given decades to show up. You didn't. Now you know the consequences. The room exploded. David stood, red-faced, shouting about manipulation, legality, mental instability. Lisa demanded to see the signature. The witnesses, the timestamps. Madison muttered, "This is bulls," to under her breath, and stormed out. I sat still. I hadn't said a word. Not when my name was read. Not when the yelling started. Not even now. Because for the first time in my life, I didn't need to explain myself. Grandma had done it for me. By the time the lawyer left, the air in the house had thickened like a storm cloud. No one looked me in the eye. David stayed behind, pacing the kitchen with clenched fists. Lisa pulled out her phone and started calling someone a lawyer. Maybe. And Madison. She just sat on the stairs, arms folded, glaring at nothing. It took less than 24 hours for the accusations to begin. I got a voicemail the next morning from Lisa. Emily, this isn't over. There's something wrong here. It's not natural. It doesn't make sense. You coached her? Or worse, you manipulated her when she was vulnerable. Then came David's email. 5 paragraphs of legal-sounding language, accusing me of exerting undue influence and orchestrating financial exploitation. He ended with, "We've contacted our own attorney. Expect to be served soon." At first, I felt nothing, just numb. Then came the shaking hands, the rapid heartbeat, the quiet voice inside me that said, "What if they take this from you? What if they convince the world that you are the villain? But then I remembered something. Something Grandma once told me while organizing her file cabinets. People lie, memory fades. But documentation, that's eternal. So I went to the upstairs closet, the one she never let anyone else touch. Inside, behind the boxes of old blankets and Christmas decorations, was a locked fireproof case. She'd given me the key 2 months before she died. Without saying why, I opened it. Inside was everything. A full notarized video recording of her reading and signing the will. Signed letters of intention. Medical evaluations confirming she was of sound mind. Even a handwritten journal entry, dated 3 days after we typed the will, that read, "I've never been more certain about anything. Emily is my legacy not by bloodline, but by loyalty." I stared at the papers, at her handwriting, at the meticulous care with which she'd covered every angle. This wasn't a whim. This was a strategy, a quiet, calculated defense against exactly what was happening now. She hadn't just trusted me with her legacy, she had protected me with it. When David's lawyer called, I was ready. I forwarded the documentation, the video, the letters, everything. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then, well, that does complicate things. But that didn't stop them. A week later, I was served. Lisa and David filed a formal petition contesting the will, citing undue influence, fraud, and diminished capacity. The hearing was set for 3 weeks out. I hired my own attorney. Her name was Grace Harlan. Sharp, precise, zero tolerance for drama. She reviewed the file and looked at me with narrowed eyes. "They don't have a case, but they'll make it loud and ugly." I nodded. "I'm not afraid of noise." She smiled. "Good, because it's about to get very, very loud." It was a Tuesday when Mr. Langford called again. His voice, as always, was professional, but this time, I heard something different behind it. A hint of gravity. "Emily," he said, "I've received notice of the formal contest. As expected." "I'm ready," I replied. But he continued. "There's one more thing. Something your grandmother left in my care. A video file. She instructed me to share it only if her will was legally challenged." I froze. A video. Yes, she called it her last word. "Would you like me to send it privately? Or would you prefer to use it in court?" I didn't hesitate. Both. That night, I opened the video on my laptop, sat in the dark, blanket wrapped around my shoulders, fingers trembling as I pressed play. The screen lit up. There she was, Grandma, wearing her favorite navy cardigan, sitting at the kitchen table where we used to drink tea. The light through the window behind her glowed soft, golden, like she knew it would be the last time anyone saw her like this. She looked straight into the camera. "If you're watching this," she began, "it means the people who called themselves my family didn't accept my choices. So let me make them again clearly, in my own voice." She paused, as if steadying herself. "I gave everything to Emily. Not because I was confused, not because I was manipulated, but because she earned it. Every bit of it. Where were the rest of you when I was in the hospital overnight? When my arthritis flared so bad I couldn't open a jar? When I needed a ride? Someone to read the fine print. Someone to just sit with me. Emily was there. You were not." Her voice didn't tremble. "If anything, it got stronger. You came for holidays. Posed for photos. Posted your captions. You brought wine and empty compliments. But when I needed real help, real time, real love, there was only one person who showed up." She leaned forward. "This isn't revenge. It's recognition. It's gratitude. It's fairness, the kind none of you ever practiced. If you want to fight this in court, fine. But know this, you're not fighting me. You're fighting the memory of every time you chose convenience over connection. And if that costs you something, well, now you know how I felt for 20 years. The screen went black. I sat in silence. Tears rolled down my cheeks, not just because she defended me, but because it was so her. Unapologetic, sharp, clear as crystal. It was a goodbye and a shield. When the video played in court 2 weeks later, the room was dead silent. Lisa's expression tightened. David refused to look at the screen. Madison blinked rapidly, lip trembling. Even the judge leaned forward, as if reminded that this wasn't just a legal proceeding, it was a human one. My lawyer, Grace, stood up after it ended. Your Honor, I believe that speaks for itself. And it did. Because sometimes the loudest voice in the room is the one that's not even alive anymore. The courtroom wasn't dramatic like on TV. No pounding gavels, no outbursts from the gallery. Just cold fluorescent lights, dry legal arguments, and the hum of an air vent above the judge's bench. But when the verdict was read, it felt like thunder. After review of the presented documentation, testimony, and the supplemental video recording provided by the decedent, this court finds no evidence of undue influence or diminished capacity. The will stands as valid and enforceable. Contest dismissed. Just like that. It was over. Except it wasn't. Lisa gasped audibly like the air had been punched from her chest. No, this can't be right. She was confused. She wasn't herself. The judge raised a hand. Ma'am, your objections have been noted and ruled on. David muttered under his breath, rising from his seat. Unbelievable. All that loyalty, all those years. And she gives it to her. I didn't flinch. Not when they glared. Not when they whispered. Not when Madison stood outside the courthouse on her phone and said, loudly, she'll burn through it in a year. Watch. But the truth was, they didn't care about the house, or the savings, or even the land. They cared that they lost. They lost to someone they never saw coming. They lost to the girl they never noticed. That night, I stood alone in Grandma's kitchen. The same kitchen where she first asked me to type the will, where she brewed lavender tea, where she once told me, money doesn't change who people are. It just reveals it. She was right. David's inheritance had been expectation. Lisa's entitlement, Madison's attention, and mine. Mine was something they never understood. Trust. People started calling me lucky. Old neighbors. Strangers on Facebook. Wow, you inherited the whole estate. What are you going to do with all that? But I didn't feel lucky. I felt hollow. Winning against your own family doesn't feel like a win. Not when it costs you them, even if they were never really yours to begin with. I walked out to the porch that evening, wrapped in Grandma's old cardigan, watched the sun sink behind the tree line, felt the weight of silence, and then I heard something, a single crow's caw in the distance, sharp, startling, like a sound that cuts through fog. It reminded me of her voice, still echoing in my ears. Fair isn't always equal. She hadn't just given me her home. She'd given me her armor, and in the end, she'd given them something too. A mirror. Whether they chose to look into it, that was up to them. 3 days after the court ruling, the silence ended. Not with a knock at the door, not with a confrontation, but with a ping. My phone lit up with a message from a number I hadn't saved. I knew the tone before I read the name. I hope you're happy. Hope it was worth tearing this family apart. Lisa. No greeting. No signature. Just that. I stared at the screen for a long time. Typed a reply. Deleted it. Typed another. Deleted that one. 2. Then I put the phone face down and went to water Grandma's garden. That night, I received 2 more. The second was from David. We're filing an appeal. Enjoy your spotlight while it lasts. The third, it was from Madison. But it was different. I don't know what I'm supposed to say. I guess I didn't see it. I thought you were just background. But maybe you were the only one who was actually there. No emoji, no sarcasm, just words. I didn't reply to any of them. Not yet. Because what do you say to people who only find their voices when they've lost their leverage? The next morning, I got a letter in the mail. Real paper. Real handwriting. From Lisa. I sat on the porch with coffee and unfolded it. It wasn't an apology. Not quite. I'm angry, not just at you, at myself. I always assumed Mom would do the right thing. The expected thing, but I guess she saw something I didn't. I'm still trying to understand that I'm not ready to forgive you, but I'm trying not to hate you either. It ended with, don't throw this away. Someday, I hope we can talk, not as enemies. As family. I reread that line 10 times. Not as enemies. What a strange thing to say. And yet, wasn't that exactly what we'd become? Not by choice, but by design. A will doesn't just divide assets. Sometimes it divides people. Sometimes it shows you who was never really standing next to you in the first place. Later that afternoon, I checked my email. There was a message from a contact I didn't recognize. The subject line read, "Helen's legacy proposal." I clicked it. Cautiously, inside was a message from a local nonprofit, the one Grandma used to support anonymously. They'd heard about the trial, read about the outcome, and wanted to start a scholarship fund. In Grandma's name, I sat in the quiet for a long time. It was strange. The people who shared my blood wanted to tear me apart, and the strangers, the ones Grandma helped quietly over the years, they wanted to build something in her honor. That night, I opened Madison's message again. I wrote, "Thank you for saying that. It mattered." Then I hit send. It started with a closet, not a secret one, not locked, just the old hallway closet in Grandma's house, the one behind the guest room, where we kept winter coats, puzzles with missing pieces, and cardigans too worn to donate. I was cleaning, not because I had to, because I wasn't sure what else to do. Grief has a funny way of making you want to scrub baseboards and refold towels you'll never use. It gives your hands something to do when your heart's too full. I reached for a box tucked behind a folded quilt. It was small, shoebox-sized, labeled in Grandma's handwriting. "For Emily when it's time." My breath caught. I sat down on the floor, opened it slowly. Inside were three things. A photograph of me, age 11, asleep on the couch with my head in Grandma's lap. She was reading a book with one hand, the other resting gently on my shoulder. A letter, folded once, sealed with a paperclip, yellowing at the edges. A pressed daffodil, fragile, perfect, still carrying the faintest scent of spring. I opened the letter. Grandma's handwriting was neat, deliberate, the same style she used when addressing Christmas cards. "Emily, I'm writing this long before it will ever matter. But I need you to know something, and I want you to hear it in my words, not through lawyers or strangers or courtrooms. The day I knew you were different wasn't the day you got straight A's, or helped me fix the dishwasher, or even the day you typed my will. It was the night you were 11. I paused. 11. You'd had a fever. You were scared. You cried, quietly thinking I didn't hear you. I sat with you all night, read to you, rubbed your back. Do you remember what you said? Just before you fell asleep, you said, 'Thank you for not leaving me too.'" Ah, I felt my chest tighten. I remembered now, a dim memory, buried beneath years of life. You didn't know it, but that moment changed me. I realized something. You weren't just in my life. You were part of it. Not a guest, not a burden, not my daughter's orphan. You were my purpose. From that moment on, I stopped worrying about who would take care of me when I got older because I already knew who would care, whether or not she had to. Tears blurred the rest of the letter, but I kept reading. "So if someday this gift I've left you feels too heavy, too controversial, too isolating, remember that night. Remember that it didn't start with a will. It started with a promise, one you didn't even know you made. You were the only one who stayed. And I'm so proud I chose you. Love always." Grandma. I sat there on the closet floor for what felt like hours, holding a letter, a flower, a life. People talk a lot about legacy, about land, money, assets. But sometimes a legacy is simpler. Sometimes it's a daffodil in a box, a memory from a night you forgot, a promise made in the dark, without words. And sometimes that's enough. It was raining that afternoon. The kind of rain Grandma used to call soft rain, the kind that didn't rush, just fell slowly and soaked everything quietly. I was in the kitchen, making tea, when I saw the car pull into the driveway. Black SUV, familiar shape. A moment later, a knock at the door. I opened it to see Madison, soaked to the shoulders. No umbrella, hair down. No makeup, no phone in hand. Just her. Real, raw, and for the first time, quiet. "Hey," she said, voice barely audible. "Hey." We stood there for a second, the air between us heavier than the rain. "Can I come in?" she asked. I nodded. "Of course." We sat at the kitchen table, The same one where Grandma taught me to play Scrabble, where she read her books, where she told me to type her will. Madison looked different. Not in the face. In the posture. No sarcasm. No performance. Just a girl who seemed like she was carrying something heavy. She spoke first. I've been angry. A lot. But not just at you. I didn't say anything. When everything happened, I was embarrassed. Not because we didn't get anything, but because it made me realize how little we gave. I looked at her. She wasn't crying, but her voice cracked. I always thought Grandma saw me as special. I posted the photos. I told people she was my favorite, but I didn't show up. Not when it counted. You did. Silence. So, I'm not here to fight. Or ask for money. That surprised me. I wanted to ask if you'd consider something. She reached into her coat and pulled out a folded brochure, slid it across the table. It was from a local literacy foundation, one Grandma had quietly supported for years. They're trying to open a new children's center. I thought, maybe we could donate something. Together, in her name. I stared at the paper, at the photo of a small reading room, at the caption, a space to grow and to be seen. I'm not asking for recognition, Madison said. And I know I don't deserve anything, but I think maybe Grandma would have wanted us to do one thing right. Together. I sat with it. For a long moment. Then I nodded. Okay. Her eyes welled up, and this time, she didn't hide it. We didn't hug. We didn't take a selfie. We just sat there. Two women who grew up in the same family, but finally saw each other. That night, I called the director of the foundation, told them we'd like to fund the reading room in full. No plaque with our names. Just Grandma's, Helen Carter, the woman who taught me what it meant to show up. A week after Madison left, I sat at the kitchen table again. Same spot, same time of day, only this time, it was quiet. Not the kind of silence that screams, the kind that rests. The house was officially in my name. The accounts were transferred. The land title, signed and filed. Legally, everything was mine. But emotionally, it was more complicated. People think inheritance is about money, but it's really about meaning, who was seen, who was valued, who mattered. And the truth was, my name on a deed didn't change how I felt about them. But it did change how they felt about me. Even the ones who hadn't reached out still lingered in my mind. Uncle David, Aunt Lisa. The weight of their anger was like a stone I never chose to carry, but somehow still held. That night, I opened Grandma's file drawer one last time. Inside was a folder I hadn't noticed before. Labeled, in her handwriting, "For Emily when you need clarity." Inside, one single sheet. It was a quote, typed. From Maya Angelou, "You can only become truly accomplished at something you love. Don't make money your goal. Instead, pursue the things you love doing and do them so well that people can't take their eyes off you." And below it, a handwritten line, "Let them keep what they think matters. If it helps them sleep, you already have what they'll never understand." I smiled, because it wasn't permission, it was perspective. The next day, I called my attorney. "I want to make a few adjustments," I said. She sounded surprised. "You're amending the trust." "Just a portion," I said. "A small fund, education-focused, split 3 ways for Lisa's grandkids, David's son, and Madison, if she ever decides to go back to school." I paused. "They'll never know it came from me." Grace hesitated. "Are you sure?" I nodded. "It's not for them. It's for me." Letting go isn't always about surrender. Sometimes, it's about not letting bitterness win. Grandma gave me the power to choose, and I chose peace. A week later, I watched the sunrise from the porch swing. Wrapped in her blanket, daffodils just starting to bloom again at the edge of the yard. I realized then, I didn't need anyone to understand. I just needed to feel light again. And that morning, I did. The house didn't change overnight. I didn't paint the walls. I didn't buy new furniture. I didn't gut the kitchen like everyone assumed I would. I kept her teacups on the shelf, her handwritten recipes in the drawer. Her porch swing, slightly crooked, still creaked in the wind. Because this wasn't just a house anymore. It was her. And now, it was mine. I wake up early these days. Make coffee the way she taught me, strong, but kind. I work from home part-time and spend the rest of my hours tending the garden she loved. I started volunteering with the local literacy center, the one Madison and I donated to in Grandma's name. We named the children's room Helen's Corner. It has a rocking chair, a daffodil mural, and a sign that reads, "Every child deserves to be seen." The family. Some stayed distant, some softened. David never spoke to me again. Lisa sent a birthday card last month unsigned. But still, Madison checks in sometimes. Short messages. Always real. We're not close, but we're no longer strangers. And that's enough. Some nights, I still dream of Grandma. She's always in the kitchen, humming some tune from the 1950s. She turns, looks at me, and says, "You're doing fine. Kiddo, just don't forget to live your life." Too, I never do. Because I know now, her real gift wasn't the land, or the accounts, or the title deed. It was something much quieter, the kind of love that doesn't need to shout, that shows up when no one else does, that sees you even when the world looks the other way. This was never just a story about money. It was about presence, about choice, about legacy, and sometimes, legacy doesn't mean leaving something behind. It means leaving something inside. Have you ever had someone quietly change your life just by showing up? If this story touched something in you, share it, because you never know who might need to hear it. And if you've ever felt invisible, remember this. People might overlook you, but the right person never will. Subscribe for more stories where silence speaks louder than words.